I'm gonna build you a house. Right here. Our house. I want to take Mildred up to D.C. to get married.
You sure about that?
By the power vested in me by the District of Columbia, I now pronounce you husband and wife.
A landmark decision at the Supreme Court on marriage. Why now? Why make Loving and the story of Richard and Mildred Loving now?
Well, I think the sad reality is we're going to need this film and this story in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. The reality is, equality is not something we ever just solve. It's not a problem that we're going to, check a box and put aside. It is something that every generation has to define for itself. And I think right now we're in a period where we need a new definition for how we're going to deal with equality. And Richard and Mildred, in the most simple, beautiful way, show us that there are human beings at the center of all these really complex social issues.
I can take care of you.
I know that.
I can take care of you.
I wish I could take credit for writing it, but Richard Loving wrote it, which is kind of the point. He was beautifully reductive in that one statement, and he said it. And I think it strikes the heart of what we're trying to do with this story and what Richard and Mildred really meant.
Joel's from Australia. She was born in Ethiopia, grew up in Ireland.
Yes.
And when you talk to them, they don't sound anything like this. So why the casting decisions here? How did that come about?
She came in, Francine Maisler, an amazing casting director that I've worked with since Mud. She was the first person Francine brought in. And she sat down, and immediately she did this thing with her lips. And she pursed them, which is exactly what Mildred does in all of this archival footage that I had studied. And I knew that Ruth had been doing what I'd been doing, which is studying all this footage. And then her mouth opened and Mildred's voice came out. It wasn't until the end of the audition that I started speaking to her that I realized she was Irish. I was dreaming with this film about Richard and Mildred's voices. And so I needed actors that were going to do the mechanical work to bring those voices back to life. And that's the work that someone of Joel Edgerton's talent and Ruth Nega's talent can do.
You go to the Virginia State Court next, right?
Yes.
You nervous?
I suppose. The lawyers told us not to expect much.
You think you'll lose?
Well, yes. But I think it's all right. We may lose the small battles, but win the big war.
We wanted to make a film that represented Richard and Mildred, and they were quiet people. I could have written a big monologue. I just don't know whose mouth I would have put it in. These were quiet, simple people. And if you choose as a storyteller to attach your story to the point of view of those people, then inevitably your narrative structure, your aesthetic structure, it's going to have to represent that point of view. And that's all I was trying to do was be truthful to who I believe they were.